So I'm gonna go ahead and hand it over to Adam to start.
Great, well, thank you. So thank you, Emily, and thank you everyone at the Derfner Judaicum and Art Collection. And thank you to all of those who are tuning in or will be tuning in because this is being recorded. So I'm very excited to present the 3 images that contribute to F11, digital paintings for the full screen. The 3 images that you can see in the exhibition, well, actually, you can inspect them. You can zoom in on them. They are part of the Digital Apamea project. Apamea being a Syrian city on the Orontes in Syria. It's now referred to as Kalat al-Mudik, and it's 40 or so kilometers due south of Aleppo. The town is still inhabited, but that's in the plain, not the archaeological park where the ancient synagogue foundations were discovered. The project started in earnest somewhere around 2018. I mean, I had worked on it before, and I had visited Syria long before. And it's appeared in half a dozen locations in Europe as an actual, not just a virtual exhibition, but it's making its stateside debut at the Derfner, so I'm very grateful. And I hope to have more showings in US venues in the future. So today what I'd like to do is to talk very briefly about the project, how it came to be, and then I will discuss the additional individual images, the mosaics, which look pretty much like this one behind me, if I may. So Digital Apamea is a virtual and an actual exhibition, and there's also a 3D VR app to boot, which I'm sorry I can't share with you. The project aimed to recreate the 4th century Byzantine synagogue floor and the experience of walking upon it, and that's where the app comes in. Apamea is hugely important for us because of approximately 20 dedicatory inscriptions in Greek, and these are from male and female donors, wives acting independently, mother-in-laws acting independently, and we know how much the benefactors gave, not in terms of, not in monetary terms, but in terms of footage of mosaic. We find out that, you know, Ambrosia gave 100 feet of mosaics, and others gave 100 feet, and some gave 50 feet, for example. We also have an inscription about the date of the synagogue's foundation, 392. And we also know the office holders as well. We hear about the archysynagogoi. We hear about a Chazan, the cantor, Nehemiah. And we also hear about the relationship with the great city of Antioch as well. However, there were a few challenges to the project. First, the context, because the synagogue was intentionally destroyed in the 5th century, about 420 AD approximately. And this is a time when Roman tolerance yielded to Byzantine intolerance and increasingly muscular Christianity that was now part of the imperial apparatus. So Christianity had become a state religion at this point. And there are several instances of other late antique synagogues that were destroyed and then churches supplanted directly above them. And in the case of Apamea, the foundations were incorporated into the walls of the grand atrium church, which actually punctured the boundary walls of the synagogue and then installed columns to create an atrium effect, hence the name, the Grand Atrium Church. So if I could just pull up let me see if I can pull up the floor plan mosaic. which you can see. The mosaics were deliberately buried and then they were paved over with another layer of mosaics, and they were discovered in 1934. And contrary to the best conservation practices of today, they were sliced and diced. They were lifted from situ, and then they were distributed between Belgium and Damascus museums. And what you're seeing before you is a reconstruction of the fragments. Some of them are in Damascus, some of them are in Brussels, some of them are extremely fragmentary. They don't even appear as these sections that you see in front of you. I mean, we use the term stone carpets, but I can assure you there were many, many more pieces than just these 22 stone carpets you see before you. And to cap it off, to add to the problem, there wasn't just one fire, there were two fires. The first was during the war, when the office of the director of the excavations, Fernand Mayence, he was directly affected. His office was bombed. And then the second fire was after the war, when the museum itself had, which is in a different location from Mayence's office, had a fire which destroyed an entire wing, which was where the findings from Apamea were displayed. You had a dedicated gallery, La Grande Salle d'Apamea, which was specifically built to honor the Belgians' imperial aspirations in Syria. And that burnt down, and with it all of the excavation reports. So we only had a handful of black and white negatives or prints to work from. We had the mosaics themselves, but they also had been subjected to, first of all, the ones in Brussels had been subjected to fire, but then they had also been subjected to various forms of intervention, both in Brussels and in Damascus. And in the case of one of the mosaics, which I'm going to show you, I'm going to enlarge it, but you can see it in this image on the left-hand side with the green medallion. That's been lost to history in entirety. We only have black and white photos of it, about 3, and there's nothing comprehensive at that. So what I wanted to do was to reverse Humpty Dumpty. I wanted to put the pieces back together again and align the fragments from Brussels and Damascus. And let's redraw, let's recreate the lost tesserae. And notably, you can't see it currently on the screen, I would encourage you to zoom, but the rainbow colored mosaics that you can see in the spiral, which so define this particular period. We refer to them as arc-en-ciel, rainbow mosaics, and these are very much connected with the Antioch tradition. So I wanted to redraw the synagogue floor, and I wanted to do it to scale. And I had measurements from Damascus, I had measurements from Brussels. So I set to work with Adobe Photoshop and some other programs for photogrammetry. And that's the science of making measurements from photographs and then creating a photo montage, if you like. So by way of comparison, if I pull up a specific mosaic, which you can see in front of you, which I hope you can see in front of you, this mosaic was actually made up of 4 different sections. One of the sections, which is the uppermost one, if that makes any sense, was faced to the wall in the storeroom. It still hadn't been conserved from the fire in the late 40s. And it was faced to the wall. I mean, nobody had seen it for decades. And thankfully, the museum was extremely helpful. This mosaic is incredibly heavy, and it's nearly 3 meters long, this particular section. And they arranged for 6 men to appear on what they called a giraffe, which was a very small crane. and they lifted it and they rotated it, such that I could piece them all together. But having said that, we had a lot of lost tesserae. There were huge numbers of missing parts to this. So it wasn't simply a case of aligning the 4 fragments. It was also a case of redrawing a lot of the actual individual tesserae and trying to complete the image. However, if I now show you this one here, which I've referred to as the Bema mosaic, strictly speaking, it's part of the Bema mosaic. There's another mosaic that abuts it. This has been lost to history. We don't know its whereabouts. It's not in Damascus. I haven't managed to locate it anywhere. We just have black and white images. And what I did with this was I used photogrammetry to piece it all together, and I reduplicated the floral motif, the green, which I replicated 13 times, I believe. And this is possibly the most important mosaic of the entire synagogue floor, because this would have been a spot where the liturgy took place. But sadly, we don't know where it is. So I set about piecing it all together using photogrammetry and then colorizing it based on approximations from other Roman mosaics at Apamea and within the region. I tried algorithms to try and colorize it. They didn't really work very well, but I was able to extract some of the main colors from that. So this is entirely rebuilt. It does not exist as you see before you. It is, in that regard, it is a fiction. But what is very interesting is that we have this inscription within it, which incidentally doesn't mention the monetary, the quantitative amount of mosaics. I mean, basically it's from 2 brothers, Eusebius and Venturius, who say they love their brothers as well as their wives, and they want to increase the years of Eusebius and Venturius. So they want to live a very long life. But unlike the other mosaics, they don't say they've made 50 feet of mosaic, for example, or 100 feet of mosaic. But what is interesting in this one, which hasn't really been noted, is that on the left-hand side of the inscription, there appears to be a lulav, which is a palm branch, which features in Jewish ritual practice connected with the Feast of Tabernacles, Sukkot. And this particular motif has escaped the eyes of many people. Most people have only noticed the menorah, which is in the, if I pull up the main floor for you, the menorah, which is in the uppermost left-hand side fragment at approximately 9 o'clock, if you were to draw the arms of a clock. There's a very small menorah, which is about 30 centimeters, and it's quite hard to find. But that is the only ostensible Jewish insignia in the synagogue. I mean, the only thing that's otherwise giving it away is the text. But if you don't read the Greek, you wouldn't necessarily discern that.
And we're almost getting right to the end of.
I'm conscious of that, and that's why.
Hours. It's so interesting. Yeah.
No, I'm conscious of that, and that's why I say there's a lot more to come with this project. But I'd like to leave you now with the floor before you. And if you have any questions, if you would like to contact me, I'd be more than delighted to answer them. You're welcome to email me. You're welcome to contact me via the Dürfner as well. And thank you again. I am really honored, and it's been a delightful show. So thank you, Emily. And thank you to the others who've taken part as well. So thank you.
Thank you. So if you just press stop sharing screen, and then we'll go back to, there we go. Okay.
There we go.
Sometimes Zoom gives me the funniest views. Okay, so we're going to move on to Donald now. So welcome. Thank you so much for coming. And I'll let you take it away.
Right. Thank you, Emily. Thank you for hosting this exhibition. And thank you, Adam, for your talk there. Really, really interesting. And thanks to everybody for coming along today. So I will just go directly into sharing my screen. I've got a video to show you at the beginning of this, which is a little narrated video of processes, a painting. One of the things that the iPad facility, the iPad allows is that you can records your painting brushstroke by brushstroke. So I thought it might be interesting to show you that process or an edited version of that, and I've narrated over that for a couple of maybe 2-minute slot there for kickoff. And then a number of slides to follow. What I've done is selected 2 paintings to go along hand in hand with each one of the paintings that are already in the exhibition to give them some context. So this painting is all about joy, the joy of autumn, and it was sketched out from a photograph initially, and then I really discarded that image as wanting to use my own colour scheme. And this red tree in the corner, in the right-hand corner, set the tone for the how I wanted the painting to go, using an Andre Derain image to get going. So as I'm painting away, I use these little dabs of paint, and they to me, whilst I'm painting in my own mind, these dabs are not only representing the fleeting effects of light as the Impressionists might do, but they actually represent the essence of the object, the living cells of that object. They are the life force. So as I'm painting the leaves of the bark of the tree, I am these leaves, I am this bark. And it's my way of kind of getting into the painting and feeling my connection not only to the painting but to life itself. After I've been painting or drawing it, I come away from the experience of doing this feeling invigorated and connected to life. And part of this practice of painting these blobs, whilst feeling that these actually represent, or even more than represent, these blobs are actually part of life itself. Okay, so we're now going to go into a series of slides. Can you hear me okay there? You give me a thumbs up? Yeah? Okay. So yeah, the next couple of slides here are really just linked to that painting. And as I said in the commentary, there was talking about how these blobs that are used whilst painting, whilst on the one hand they are describing light and shade within the painting, that they are also seen from my side as energy. And so, like the tree on the left-hand side there with these blue marks on it, it's not a blue spotty tree. This is the energy that is rising through the core of this tree. This is the tree, and sometimes these marks will disappear in the course of the painting, but quite often, bits and pieces of them will remain as well. So, and this is part of my way of kind of just feeling and connected into the source of life as I'm painting. And yeah,
as you can see, using really bright colors here. Following one here, much more sort of traditional type of coloring. For this painting, what I was trying to capture really was that very lovely soft feeling that you get when you walk into a forest, and especially at the moment our eyes are so done in by working with computers all of the time, but we walk into a forest and you just get this beautiful soft massage on the eyes, and this is kind of the feeling that I was wanting to achieve when looking at this image, with the play of light and of course energy. This is a painting that was in the exhibition. I spoke about it in some depth previously, so I maybe won't speak about it that much this time around. But one thing that I use whilst painting is sections of flat areas like this, and like in the blue sky there, where I have broad areas which have been made very plain, and often this is to contrast against high areas of activities to concentrate the eye and create a dramatic effect. The moon is an image that I love to use in my paintings, and it appears many times, partly because it's just such an amazing form, and all of its connotations through literature and life, but also just as a useful tool in painting, just to have the access to this lovely shape that can be placed within the painting. So yeah, this is a painting that was actually done as an oil painting many years ago. The painting has been long lost, but they came back into painting into the digital form, and that just over lockdown here, I painted my memory of this painting, and it was, you know, there was no tree. It was really just, I've done a number of paintings that are just solitary trees that are really just all about an explosion of energy and emotion contained within the form of a tree, and this is one of them, and playing around with light and just a sense of drama within a landscape. And again, this way of using areas of large areas of plain, like the dark sky there, where not much is going on apart from tiny little spots of light, where and to contrast with the high activity of what's going on within the tree itself. I'm moving on fairly quickly because there are quite a few slides here. So again, the moonlight here, from a different angle in the tree, playing around here and exploring the space between branches, and one of the facilities that you have in working with the eye, using layers, and so you can take an image and change the colors of the layers, and then cut through from one layer through to the next, and it has the effect of building up an illusion of depth. And so this is something that I used quite a bit in this image. Cape Flowers, one of the paintings that's in the exhibition. It's one of the more sort of highly observed pictures, which I was working from a photograph from this image, and it has a sort of almost photorealist impression, at least from a distance anyway. I'm hoping that I can zoom into this. I'm going to try anyway, but if I click onto this and zoom in, is that giving you a zoom? Yeah. Okay, so now we've zoomed into your screen, then we can see that the marks that are being made on the image are really quite rough, and that it could work as an abstract painting when it's viewed up close like this. And to me, that's important. This is sort of the guts or the heart of the painting. I'm not looking to make polished, finished looking pieces of work, even though that might be the outside. From the painters that really excite me are what I would call the gutsy painters, the Goyas and the Van Goghs of this world. Not that I'm putting myself in their category at all, but this is just my one. So the next couple of pictures are kind of exploring this type of painting where, again, it's quite important that these are zoomed into, that if they were printed out, they'd be seen large, so that kind of we discover the painting on a different level when we see them close up like that, and there's the lovely effects of shadows on snow, and all these contrasting textures that occur in that environment.
Just wanted to give you a heads up, maybe like 2 to 3 more minutes.
Okay, yep. So I'll just move on through these ones here so that we have the last clip to go through. So the can really move on without a landscape painting without considering environmental issues. So this painting is really about erosion, and these paintings dissolving into the landscape, and it follows up with its sister painting, which is now the spirit of that tree. And so we kind of go from these two trees as they begin to move into the next world and the spirit. And this is painted outdoors in my local park in the winter, and more recently I did this painting here, which there is a little video of, so we'll just end up with that. That's okay.
Right. So this painting drawn on the iPad was done on the side of Maxwell Pond, and in it I'm playing around with the idea of being able to expand the field of vision, and you can see there I've already shrunk the image down once, and I'm doing it again there, creating space around the outside of the image. So if I'm copying from a photograph, for example, that I'm already limited by the composition that's been selected in that image. But here, sitting outside, I might decide that I'd like to bring in a bit more onto the left or the right of the image, and this is allowing me to do this, the iPad providing this facility. So this is basically what I'm exploring here in this painting, is playing around with the idea of just shrinking and expanding the parameters of the image, and of course the shape could be changed as well should I wish to do that, but I'm really still remaining within the selected shape of the rectangle that I'm working within. So quite an exciting possibilities here,
And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was fascinating to see the animation of how it's made. Really interesting. Thank you for including that. Thank you, Donald. So we're going to move on to Annie Lee. So take it away. You should be able to share screen if you want to. You're a co-host, so thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Emily, and thank you, Adam and Donald. I am hopefully this works. Can everyone see a PowerPoint slide now? Okay, great, thanks. My name's Annie. I'm a 21-year-old artist born and living in London. I work with a variety of media, from obviously digital painting, but also physical painting, photography, sculpture, video, drawing, all of that kind of stuff. I'm currently taking a year out of my studies of fine art at the Slade in UCL because of the pandemic. But in that time, I've been tutoring students online in art and design, and also trying to remain creative for myself, but in my room instead of university. So to give a bit more context behind these paintings, which I appreciate look very confusing at first, I thought it'd be best for me to discuss my experiences and previous works which helped lead up to these paintings which are in the exhibition. So to start with, that's just a photo of the studio space I had in my first year at the Slade. Very grateful to have a massive wall space, a big table as well, and then lots of people around me as well that I could bounce ideas off of and go and grab food together. So it was a very social atmosphere, and I was exploring themes through drawing and ceramics as well, of like friendship and nostalgia and childhood. And yeah, it was a great experience to be working in this lovely space, which obviously changed very quickly when the pandemic hit, and I had to move very quickly back to here where I am now, in my bedroom in my family home. And that was, for many people as well as me, very hard to adjust to that new environment and having to connect with people at university only through Microsoft Teams and Zoom calls and emails and all of that. So not the best experience ever. But that meant I had to find creativity in other ways, being in lockdown in my house 24/7 pretty much. It meant I was in the kitchen a lot, of course, and that meant that I was just bored and played with my food. And so I was trying to reimagine spaces that I've been inhabiting for most of my life in different ways, so that life would be a bit more exciting for me. And then this example, apart from the kitchen, is in my room. So these are from a series of photographs where I was exploring that same thing of trying to make a space less monotonous. So the left is a windowsill in my bedroom, like just to my right, and then the right one is some clothes on my door. And I purposely made these photographs overexposed and very blurry and badly composed, just so that I would not be as bored with them. But they created very abstract photos, and you probably wouldn't be able to tell what they are if I hadn't revealed it. And then also a couple of photos from these series were purposely putting my finger or my hand in front of the camera lens to distort the view and make it look rubbish, whatever rubbish is. And yeah, that made me think a lot about what counts as good art, what counts as bad art. And I think a lot of the works that I make are very varied and also not immediately aesthetically pleasing, which is a key part of the photos or paintings in the exhibition. So I showed those photographs, and in particular this photograph, with my tutor back in 2020 when my tutorials at uni were online. And I thought that showing a digital photograph would be okay because it's not like a sculpture or a very textured painting that through a virtual space, the materiality of it is flattened immediately and completely. And it wasn't what I was expecting from him, but the tutor kind of just turned it into a bit of a treasure hunt of trying to find where the blemishes or marks on my blank white wall in my bedroom were within the photograph, contrasted with his blemishes on his actual physical laptop screen, which was made kind of dirty and greasy from all of his children that were playing around with it too. So for your interest, if you wanted to know, there's a couple of arrows there to point it out. You might have been able to see it immediately, but if your screen is also very dirty like mine, it's quite ambiguous. And I thought it was interesting how a lot of visual information starts to appear, or maybe not that much in this photo, the longer that you look at it. And I thought that was quite interesting to try and explore within the Smudges and Dust series in the exhibition. So yeah, I wanted to try and capture that unique experience I had of studying a practical art degree online, and then the universal experience that everyone was kind of having of just staring at these computers all day, every day. And that is just a shot of the laptop which I'm currently on, and my view personally of that. So the marks are still quite subtle on this photograph, but even me looking at this photo now, I've now got another layer of my dirty screen, which I thought was interesting. So then I turned to photographing my actual computer screen instead of the surroundings like my wall and window. And the next photographs coming up are just edited a bit more to make the smudges and fingerprints and dust a bit more, well, capture them a bit better. And it made me think a lot more about the action of opening and closing this laptop and interacting with it every day. And how we often just overlook the computer as a thing that we use. We kind of are able to filter out in our brains all of the existing surfaces of the computer and go straight to the content that we're looking at. And I think that these images were quite interesting for me in terms of the colours that came out from the editing, but perhaps as an outcome was too obvious for me. And I was much more interested in wanting to blur that physical space and the digital spaces together. And yeah, see how for me the computer has become like a physical object in its own right and a replacement for being in a physical art gallery, rather than just like something that you have to get through in order to see something. So this is one of the paintings from the exhibition, and just in terms of the technical process of doing it, I used the photos from previous slides as a starting point, but mainly worked with my iPad in Procreate, which is a digital art application containing loads of brushes and colours and tools and things like that to replicate something that you would get physically, but obviously on a digital screen. So I was using things like an acrylic brush and an oil brush and like a smudge tool to create all of these fingerprints, purposely trying to keep to quite a dark, or very dark, a muted colour palette, and maintain as much of that subtlety as possible, sort of to echo the same effect as the white wall photograph, which I showed earlier. Yeah, so those are those. And then just to flick back to some previous work as well, I wanted to show the next couple of slides as an introduction to why interaction within my art practice is so important for me and how that infiltrated into the project later on. So this was a fake plug socket, so no electricity attached to it, that I installed in a very functional sink in the shared studio. And I thought it was really interesting for me and funny to observe people interacting with that physical space very differently. They were kind of a bit worried about using the sink and didn't know whether they would get electrocuted or something from it. Obviously they were not, because it was fake, but that was quite a cool thing to do. And then interaction in maybe a more physically engaging and immersive way. So in this installation, the audience would have to try and perch on a seat, but not be impaled by the spikes, in order to look inside what's in the cardboard box. So more of a physically exerting experience. And then I guess interaction in more of a way of evoking something for the viewer. So things like nostalgia or memories or connections and conversations with people. In these examples, it's related more to childhood, but it could be anything. Yeah, so then back to how that was incorporated into the project Smudges and Dust. I think that everyone's experience of viewing these images are very different because we're on different screens, different laptops, different rooms, different countries, and some people might have the glare from the sun kind of reflecting on their screen. Some people might have their screen very dim if they wanted to save battery or something, and that will influence how the marks are seen or not seen. Yeah, and I think that the ambiguity of that and that abstraction from these paintings is, I guess, activated or completed by the audience viewing it. Because hopefully when you're seeing this on a screen, you've got some other marks, unless your screen is like completely new, but you would have some fingerprints or something on it, which would add that physical dimension to the digital dimension. And yeah, that creates and adds to the experience rather than hinders the viewing experience. So you can, if you want to, like brighten your screen now or dim your screen yourself and notice how the things might change. Yeah, I think that is it. So I will, yeah, that's my end slide with my website and Instagram if you are interested in some of those works.
Thank you so much, Annie, for that presentation. And just to also mention, if you visit the online exhibition, there are links to all of the artists' websites or social media. So if you go on, you can find more information there as well. So because we're a manageable size group, if anyone wants to ask a question, I don't see anything in the chat, but if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask, feel free to just jump right in. Oh, thank you, Susan. Susan has put the URL of the exhibition in the chat, so it's there.
I'll go with a question. This is Byron speaking, old friend of Donald, so it's good to see you and good to see everyone. So thank you for the exhibition, and thank you artists for walking and talking about your work. I'm relatively new to digital art, and I see these, and Annie, you talk about there's a lot of sort of interaction with the art as part of your pieces, and I wonder for each artist, is the intent that these live digitally? Is there an optimum way to view it? Is it up to the viewer, or are they meant to be printed and framed? I'm just curious how you think about it when you put these together.
Yeah, I'm happy to start off. I think for my project, they are intended to be viewed digitally rather than printed out and viewed physically, though of course there's nothing stopping you from doing that if you want to. I think that it was really important though to focus for me on that digital aspect of things, because in my experience people were creating physical things to be shown digitally, and that didn't translate as well as maybe they had hoped for, because, well, you would have like fingerprints on the screen or something, or you wouldn't be able to really feel the clay, whereas this one feels like it's digital on a digital, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah, it does.
And I'm happy to comment as well. Can you hear me, or am I still muted? Yes, Byron, I'm also happy to comment about that, because certainly, with a lot of what I deal with, looking at it digitally is almost microscopic, so that you can, also deal with layers, you can throw a filter on something, you can throw a color on something, and then you might be able to discern more information. And in fact, I don't know whether you've ever heard about the program D-Stretch or not, but a lot of people who work on, say, rock art use D-Stretch such that they can actually read or visualize the graffiti, because you wouldn't see it with the naked eye. And in fact, you know, when you're, you know, at a site with graffiti, often you can only see it when you're using like a mirror and you're trying to reflect the sunlight onto it. So when you then have a photographic image of it, and then you can put filters over it and colorize it or invert it or play around with it, you're more likely to see something than you would necessarily with the naked eye in situ. But then, of course, you know, also with the naked eye, you see a much, much broader range of color than you do in terms of how it is reproduced, for example. But I mean, that's a whole other question, actually, about colorization. But certainly, I mean, you know, the digital really does complement the physical. And in many instances, I mean, it just greatly enhances it as well. So I hope that answers the question.
Oh, that's helpful. Donald, you
I haven't actually seen Byron. I was only seeing Annie there. I wasn't seeing you, Byron.
Oh, that's okay. I'm just another person.
Yes.
Thank you, Donald. I don't know. You
Okay.
zoomed
No,
in on
but
some
I
pieces.
love the decor. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because I'm working on another project with frescoes, Roman frescoes in the German city of Trier. And first of all, you physically cannot get that close to them. But then when you can zoom in on them digitally, you can see the brush strokes, you can see, you know, the crevices, you can see all the cracks, you can see a lot of the intervention that's happened as well. And in some instances, you would never be able to take in all of that data just with the naked eye. And this is why sometimes these 3D models really help you, because otherwise, you know, how are you supposed to conceptualize, say, a whole room of artworks?
Thank you,
So
Adam.
what are you working with at the moment? I'm sorry, I was going to ask Byron what medium or media he's working with at the moment.
I'm not working at all. So I'm just an observer. I'm curious about the digital form. And I was going to say that I saw, you know, Donald, you suggested we zoom into yours to see parts, and I don't know if you intended that just for digital or if you intended them to be printed. I'm curious about yours as well.
Yeah, no, thanks, Byron, and lovely to see you, and thank you for coming. I've not seen Byron for years, so this is a real treat. But my answer would be all of those, all of the above. That sometime next year, in April next year, I actually have an exhibition in Geneva of prints of the paintings, and I'm really looking forward to seeing them in their printed form. And it's David Hockney, for example, who's leading the field in digital painting, presents all of his work on a printed format very successfully. And you know, with the printing techniques that are available these days, certainly a very, very high resolution image is possible, as well as the fact that you get the texture of the paper and so on, the light falling on. Having said that, you know, the image, the quality of the image that you'll get on the screen is, you're never going to get anything better than that, and that you have the light coming through it. So And you know, there are possibilities now for artists to sell their works as the introduction of NFTs, non-fungible tokens. So I'm dipping my toes into that insane world as well, and we'll see what happens there. But yeah. But I suppose that's, you know, that's another thing altogether. But just in terms of exploring, yeah, I look forward to seeing them printed out large.
Okay.
You know, that there are certainly, one of the problems with the screen is that we are limited by the size of the screen itself. But of course you can zoom in. So, you know, there's pros and cons in both directions, but it's a very, very exciting medium, and I feel like I'm very much at the beginning of the process of discovery, and I'm delighted to be here.
Neat, thanks.
Well, thank you so much. We've just reached 2 o'clock, so that was actually a great way to end, and that's really, that question is core to this virtual exhibition. The idea of art that's best seen on screen.